happens because the free market is saying you and your following are so worth it. I need to give you money in exchange for your audience.
Alexis Ohanian, thanks for coming in.
I structured it like a startup. If you're building the next Reddit, normally an investor like me would invest, let's say in this case, it was like $5 million, $6 million to start the company. And it would be expected that I would not have board control and I would give a majority of the shares to the rest of the team for free.
In some cases, more opportunity for the athletes than ever, but also it has certainly caused like political problems for a lot of schools.
What is undeniable here is you're seeing this professionalization of sports at so many different levels. And when you have, for instance, women of basketball in college making millions of dollars, God bless, that's amazing.
Today on Portfolio Players, we sit down with tech and sports investor Alexis Ohanian. Best known as the founder of Reddit, Alexis now invests from his 776 Ventures, and he has truly gone big on women's sports with Angel City FC, Chelsea Women's FC, and his track competition Athlos. Welcome back to Portfolio Players, presented by E-Trade from Morgan Stanley. I'm Dan Roberts here at FOS in New York, and today we've got the sports and tech investor Alexis Ohanian. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
All right, hell yeah. Is it fair to say, like at some point along the line, some number of years ago, you really made investing in women's sports your focus? Obviously, you're investing in a lot of things,
for sure.
But that became like your main public mission. Talk about that.
Yeah. Well, look, it was because in March of 2019, when I laid out the grand plan on Twitter, and I said, look, the World Cup's coming up to the US.
Now it's coming again right now.
It's coming again now. But back in 19, Women's World Cup was coming. I was not a fan of the sport, but I knew I was going to catch some of the matches. And I had seen a team in the NWSL sell for like $3.5 million that day. And I started ranting because I was like, this doesn't make sense. Like, I don't follow the sport, but yet I know who some of the stars are because they've transcended the sport. Why do I know that? Because they are big enough personalities thanks to social media. There's enough people following them, literally millions, that I now have heard about them. I know there's a legacy of greatness in American soccer for the women, not for the men. Sorry, guys. The women are excellent, have always been excellent. And those are all data points that tell me, not to mention the fact that like when the Women's World Cup is on TV, you have tier one brands promoting it, you have tier one media talking about it, and you have fans showing up in sports bars and watching it. So all those things pointed to a league that should be able to create more value than a team being worth $3.5 million. Literally, one of the players on that team, Megan Rapinoe, was worth at least that much money in brand value as her whole team. Like, what was wrong? And so by the end of that rant, I just said, look, I'm going to either buy a team or start a new team because it could be worth $1 billion one day. And this is the most obvious investment I could make. And Alex Morgan, to her credit, I love seeing her on the wall here at Front Office Sports, Alex responded and she said, I can help you with that. And I had her come down from Orlando, hosted her at the home for a day and just took notes and just asked her dumb questions. Here's top athlete in the sport. And I was like, what am I missing? Why is this not viable? And, she's as talented as she is on the pitch. She's equally as brilliant and impressive off the pitch. And Alex was just straight up like, yeah, this makes no sense. It shouldn't be this way. And with her guidance, I sought out, I looked into buying some teams, but I ultimately just ended up buying an expansion. It cost $1 million for an expansion fee back then. The most recent, I think Denver paid $150 million. So pretty good for 4 or 5 years later. And set to invest and build, Angel City FC. And that proving all of the people wrong, and there were a lot. When that tweet went viral, there were a lot of people who said, you're an idiot. No one watches women's sports. You're going to lose all your money. And though there were a lot of women's soccer fans that were like, please buy my team. Like, we know what you're capable of in building Reddit. Like, we think you can do a lot for this. And so I will give them credit too, but I love the haters. And so I screenshotted all those tweets of the assholes who were like, you're never going to make any money. You're an idiot. No one watches women's sports. And so every time we hit another revenue milestone, sellout crowd, I would post about it and then tag them with their old tweet, thanking them for the inspiration. And frankly, it's been such a great investment that it's compounded now. And I just keep, whether it's emerging sports broadly, like investing early in TGL and buying the first team in that league, LA Golf Club, or even starting a league of our own with this Formula One of track and field, Athlos. I am obsessed. And I still think it's one of the best opportunities, even as valuations have grown. I still think we have another 5 years probably until they get to where they should be. And I just want to keep building.
You got out of Angel City.
I did not. So I was the founding control owner. The short version of the story is I structured it like a startup, which if you're building the next Reddit, normally an investor like me would invest, let's say in this case, it was like $5 million, $6 million to start the company. And it would be expected that I would not have board control and I would give a majority of the shares to the rest of the team for free. I did that, and it works great in tech. In sports, that is a terrible idea. That is what I did when I started Angel City. So I was the founding control owner in the eyes of the league, right? So it's my ass on the line. Unlike if you're building the next Reddit, if the next Reddit goes to zero, no one cares. If your sports team goes to zero, the league says, hey, we need money. You got to fund this. So normally a league never should have let me be the founding control owner and not have board control and not own the vast majority of the shares. Instead, I very generously gave board control and 80%, 75% of the ownership away to the three ladies who served as sort of the front end of the business, so Natalie Portman, Kara, and Julie, and learned a lot from that. The league never should have approved it, but I think the NWSL was in a tricky place back then. They were just happy to take any money they could get from me. So eventually, the only real solution was to align control, like board control of the company, with a control owner. And so we eventually decided, okay, let me find a new control owner. In this case, it was Bob Iger, Willow Bay. We ran a whole process and then let myself get diluted down and no longer have the control stake. But still a shareholder, still on the board, still very excited about it. Like I said, learned a lot from that process. You for sure, the next team that I started, LA Golf Club, board control, vast majority of ownership, commensurate with the dollars put in, and at the end of the day, like the three ladies still, they played a role in getting it all started, and were handsomely rewarded for putting up no money. But I'm not upset about that. I think the best outcome here is we've got Bob and Willow. They have board control, and it's good. It's good. It's a rebuild.
Yeah, I know you say you learned a lot. Just one more question on Angel City. I mean, there was a big story about kind of the, maybe not infighting, but disagreements between people. And maybe part of that is when you have so many different owners, but Angel City's also become like the poster child for celebrity ownership. Like the AFC followed that model. Now you have a ton of, not just former athletes, but actors and Hollywood types getting into, especially soccer, MLS, NWSL. Do you think part of the learning there was like, there isn't such a thing as too many cooks when it comes to team ownership?
No, I think, I think really the lesson is if you're founding a team and you're financing it, you should have board control and you should not give away 80% of the ownership for nothing. Right? Like at least even some of the, we had some great celebrity owners, Eva Longoria, like folks who actually invested money. So like Eva actually invested money to get her ownership stake. And I think, having a large ownership group early on in women's sports certainly was helpful because it helped. I mean, look, I can't tell you how many headlines I saw with my wife's name in it because it was very advantageous for our team to market the fact, even though Serena was not actually literally an investor, right? She's my wife, so equal sort of economic party, but obviously a tremendously powerful brand to put in an article in 2020 when no one was investing in women's sports to say, hey, look, this is a seismic shift. And yes, DoorDash was our first front of kit sponsor. Hey, DoorDash, like it's worth a 7-figure deal because look at the celebrity, look who's attached to it. So I think big lesson, and look, it's a moot point because there's no league in the world that would ever let a structure like that happen. And it was just the NWSL was kind of a mess back in 2019, so that happened.
Elsewhere in soccer, Chelsea.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, I bought 10% of the Chelsea Women's Football Club. Very exciting. I mean that.
How do you circle on something like that? It's very different from in the U.S. Obviously European soccer. It's just a completely different world.
Yeah. Look, it's a lot of folks were definitely curious. My thinking, the opportunity in American soccer was obvious in 2019, just like I said in the tweet, because American men's soccer is so bad that you can market, right? The US men have never done anything impressive in soccer. And it's no disrespect to them. It's just the rest of the world is really, really good. But the women are dominant. And marketing excellence, telling the story around excellence is much easier, as you can imagine, than mediocrity. And so the idea that you could tell Americans, hey, this is the most important soccer league in America, but also like the world, and the American women that you love cheering for overwhelmingly play in our league here at the NWSL. So there's a clear storyline. The English are a very interesting country in this regard because they invented the sport of football. They are tremendously dominant on the men's side in the culture of the sport. And it's this idea where if you ask the average American sports fan, hey, think of American soccer excellence. They're only thinking of women. Maybe Mia Hamm, Alex Morgan, etc. They can't think of any men because there haven't been. Sorry, Christian, but like there's a legacy of excellence, right? Now you ask that same question of an English football fan and say, hey, English football fan or English sports fan, think of English football greatness. There's a lot of amazing guys they're thinking of, Beckham, Rooney, etc. And so it almost works against the women's game by default, because when you say to them, hey, come watch some English football, and women are playing it, by default, and this is human nature, they're comparing it to the men. Mm-hmm. This is the same issue the WNBA ran into for a number of decades, because these women were being compared to Jordan. And the subconscious thing was, well, why aren't they doing the things that Jordan does? And the idea is, again, look at it from first principles. These women are fundamentally different. So the women's game is fundamentally different. And a good example here is in tennis. No one is out here thinking like, well, geez, that women's match isn't that great because they aren't doing the thing that Djokovic does, because we understand women's tennis is a different sport from men's tennis. And so part of it now, and I think what broke through in England, again, there's an aura of English football that's tremendous. The Premier League, right? Most of us here in America who want to watch the best men's football wake up at weird hours to watch Premier League football. So the English game has this aura of excellence on the men's side. And it's easy to look at the women's side and say, okay, well then presumably they are great. But in the last, I'd say few years, you have England winning back-to-back Euros, the women. Now you've got a bunch of English kids going to school feeling proud to be English because their women brought home the trophy. You do it once, that's a big deal. You do it twice back-to-back, that was for me, it's like obvious. Okay, this is the tipping point. Now you're shifting the culture to say, oh, okay, I'm not going to default compare this English women's footballer to a guy. I'm going to evaluate it just as its own sport. And so you really start seeing that shift. And then simultaneously, you're seeing a lot of American stars on our national team, which is still the best in the world, wanting to spend time in England playing ball there, which again starts to bring more awareness from American audience. We love cheering on our fellow Americans. And you look at a club like Chelsea that has tremendous pedigree, amazing trophy case, and it's a chance to invest on the ground floor of an advanced elite program and brand. So it's like, you know, the women's club got spun off, which is super smart. I think it's what the best clubs are doing. If they normally the women's club sits sort of with the boys underneath the men on the structure, spin it out. Again, let it be rebuilt from first principles. I know it's a damn cliche, but it's true. Like, reevaluate this entire organization as a women's club, not as a sub-brand of the men's club, as its own thing. Put great leadership in. Aki is a tremendous president, like high integrity, high output, like a dream president for a football club. And she's delivering on building a team using the legacy of Chelsea women, which is, you know, the best, but now rebuilding the business side as its own standalone business. And so that, to get, you know, 10% of that was amazing. And it feels like a good time for English football in particular, because I think it's going to start to break through in the American consciousness as well. And, you know, hopefully the World Cup's a big unlock there for that. On the women's side as much as the men's. Obviously, it's the men's World Cup, but I think it's going to tip.
I have like a little bit of skepticism that the World Cup being in the U.S. will lead to this big boom in soccer interest after the World Cup leaves. In other words, you know, we hear that from MLS too, that this will be a big boost to us.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, will there be a long tail from that?
So here, my contrarian take is that it will lead to a boom, but it'll be bigger for the English side. So why do I think that? If, let's take a look at men's football or men's soccer, America. Let's say you've got a bunch of casual soccer fans or soccer curious who are now going to be subjected to it. And they're going to be like, oh, I love this. Beautiful game. Cool. I want to learn more. And again, I think of this probably too much like a tech CEO. So they're going to ask their sort of early adopter friend. They're going to ask the friend of theirs who's like the expert of soccer. Or they're going to go on Reddit. They're going to whatever football, like hardcore fan community. They're going to say, hey, I'm into football now. Should I watch the MLS? And most of those people, if they're experts, are going to say, nah, no. And why? Again, why is such a fucking powerful question? Why? Because the best people in the world, they're playing in the Premier League. And if you want to watch the best, and as Americans, we want to fucking watch the best, you're going to wake up early, just like I do, to go watch those overseas matches. And so I actually think it'll be a bigger lift for the non-US league, MLS. Because again, you're watching men's football. I love this guy who's on this team. Like, right. Where do I watch him play?
Where does he play during the regular season?
It's probably there. Now, and I think on the women's game, it's going to be very, very interesting because, you know, obviously the women are not playing, but again, it's going to awaken more sort of soccer mania in the country. And I think it's still to be determined. Does the NWSL get the big bump? Does the WSL get the big bump? But I think it's one, I don't know if it's one or the other, but I definitely think there's an opportunity for the WSL to ride the aura of the Premier League, because at the same time that friend is asking, hey, where do I watch? And they're like, oh, England, of course, the Premier League, that's where the best men play. There's almost this natural assumption of like, oh yeah, so like, are the best women in the WSL too? And that's a loaded question. Like technically the NWSL has a very, very stacked roster, but the WSL also has an incredibly stacked roster of players. So I think it's anyone's ball game, but I do think on the men's side, the Premier League is the big winner.
Let's talk about TGL.
Okay.
I feel like it's just a perfect fit with your background too, because it's a new media model.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's what's smart about it is these kind of bite-sized moments. I think what we're seeing in the US, the big pro leagues, the season is just too long.
Yeah.
And we're seeing that they need ways to spice it up in the middle. They're all trying to rethink what they do for an all-star game. You know, TGL, it's like, it's just this one quick thing. Mm-hmm. And I feel like there's got to be an inspiration there with Athlos too, your track startup.
It is, for me, you know, I got the call from Tiger. I've been on his foundation board for a long time. And I took the call because you always obviously take a call from Tiger about whatever. And this was a pitch to basically build a league that was going to compete with Live. And I'm like,
is that what he said? Compete with Liv?
This is what I'm saying. And so I'm like, look, Tiger, I'll sign up. I mean, you tell me where you want to go to war and I'm there. But like, let me take the pitch and let me evaluate it because I still got a job to do. And here's the thing, and he knows, and I've never watched golf before. Not a sport for me, not a sport I played. Like I said, American football is the only sport that mattered. And at the end of the day, one of the reasons why I could never get into golf was because I didn't have the kind of time, I didn't play it, and I didn't have the time to devote to watch days and days and days of a sport that I wasn't already into. And what I loved about the value proposition in TGL was very simple. Again, why should I watch? Prime time, best golfers in the world, mic'd up, in front of a hopefully raucous live crowd. And then again, naive golf guy, I think back, what are all the highlights I've ever seen in my feed as a casual sports fan? What are all the highlights I've ever seen in golf? On the rare occasion, it's like a hole-in-one or something from the fairway. But most of the time, where's all the drama in golf? It's on the green. Mm-hmm. It's the short game. So you're telling me, yes, you're hitting off into a sim. But again, I don't care. If I'm watching on broadcast, I'm just watching some HD background. Who cares? But all the energy, all of the highlights are in front of humans on a real surface that's in front of a raucous crowd. And again, as an NFL guy, I'm looking at waste management. And I'm like, that looks fun. The golf that I generally...
The Wasted Open.
I haven't been yet, but I look forward to it. Like, there were so many elements to the story, like basically the clips that would come out of TGL that I was like, hell yes, and bought the first team, LA. And so, for better or for worse, any new league now, and I'd say in the last 4 or 5 years, has to win the war of attention on social media. Because you got to earn your way into that big media deal. I have no delusions with Athlos. Like, we went as wide as we could. The reason we had 3 million people tune in last year is because we said no one gets exclusivity. ESPN Plus, DAZN, YouTube, Twitter. This year we added Ion. Like, if you have a television or internet connection, we want you to watch Athlos because I want the exposure. I'm going to make the money I can make day one with brand partnerships, Tiffany, Toyota, Cash App, Instacart, non-endemic running brands, like bigger, real, meaty brands. And then I'm going to make sure we can tell this story better than anyone on social, whether it's the run-up to the race, just like I think UFC does really well in the run-up to a fight. And then for the moments themselves, right? If you're not at Athlos, I want you feeling FOMO because you're missing out on an amazing festival experience and just a great night of sport. And then if you are there, you're having the time of your life. And it's again, a lot of people come to Kentucky for the Derby, and the average person can't name a single horse or jockey. And my bet is these are some of the most telegenic, compelling athletes in sport. Every 4 years, they're the most watched, and then they disappear. So why can't we make this Formula One of track and field a thing and make it consistent year round?
You were just telling me that you're in boxing too, or that you have a startup that you've invested in that's like tech for boxing?
So I have a startup that I've seeded that's going to work on a part of it on the technology side. I do think, look, Jake Paul can pull the numbers in. So no doubt there. But can you build the sport back the world shut down.
The things that get viewership are the Ali, carnival things.
And like Frazier. Yes. Yeah. So, but I think it takes time. I think it's like a decade. I think you have to make the investment now for the payoff in another 10 years when that new generation of fighters comes up that's like sort of treating it differently. So my hot take is, okay, hold on. NFL was the only sport I watched growing up. It's the sport I played. It's the only sport I loved. I didn't like tennis. I didn't care about tennis. Obviously, I started dating my wife, got smart about tennis, fell in love with tennis because it is the purest expression of 1v1 who is better. As long as there are no human line judges lying about shit, as long as you have AI or robots, it's pure, right? Ball is in or out.
Sorry, doubles, but yeah.
Sorry.
No, I'm with
singles one-on-one. But I mean, if you're talking about how do you make sport the purest expression of just 1v1 who is the best, even team sports. Like I love the
you say
NFL.
something about track though, like a race.
Well, so this is where. So I started to get obsessed with this purity because it just gives you this, right? The reason we love sport is it's zero sum. There are winners and there's losers. And in business, we make shit up to decide like, oh, we're doing well, we're not, we're competing. Here's a leaderboard, here's a ranking. All that shit's bullshit. Sport is this purest version. I think that's why we love it as a species. And that's one of the things that's missing. Boxing could be there, but part of the problem is all those fights that ended in a decision. You're looking at those judges and you're like, really? That punch landed, that one didn't? Like it feels like it's tainted. And computer vision 5 years ago was good enough, and thankfully now it's everywhere in tennis, but it was good enough to call a ball in and out. Now it's fucking trivial. It is starting to get good at being able to say, well, that was a left jab that landed on the body. And once I think we're 5 years away, probably sooner, but I'm gonna sandbag it, from being able to say, watch this fight, and with near 100% accuracy, actually grade it. And I think that becomes the technological foundation to help really bring some more professionalism to the sport and have people really start to feel like, okay, this is the purest. I mean, it's fighting. The reason I think tennis is so special is because it's like a version of combat sport that actually has a racket and a ball, but it's this pure expression of 1v1. And so I've started to get obsessed with this, especially in this digital age. And that, of course, brought me to track and field where, yes, to your point, you actually have this very, very pure expression of everyone lines up. Someone comes in first, someone comes in second. And it's so simple and pure and elegant. And in a swipe first culture, it's an easy way to tell a really good story really quickly.
Now you keep calling it pure though. What about the purists who say the more artificial intelligence or bots or auto, judge line calls that you bring in, the less pure it is? Like, there's people who watch a ball game and they say part of it is having that human ump who sometimes makes a bad call.
No, I've ranted on social media for a very long time. I'm not a baseball guy, so whatever. Crush me because I don't really follow baseball. It never made sense to me why those balls and strikes are called by anything other than a robot, especially today. Who's the guy that everyone trolls? Who's the ump? Angel Hernandez?
Oh, is he the one who ruined the Tigers pitchers?
Yeah, I think someone fact check me on this. But like the fact that everyone has someone who's so notoriously bad at their job that it's a meme, and we tolerate it as like, well, that's just part of the game. No, it doesn't have to be. And this is where there were a lot of people, I remember complaining about in the same way tennis having human line judges. Like it doesn't make any sense. Like I'm sorry, some people are going to lose their jobs in the process, but like the technology objectively makes the sport more fair and better. And in tech, we talk about first principles all the time. And it's this idea that like, you just ask the question, why do you have a human line judge, or why do you have a human line judge calling a ball in and out when a robot can do it better and be auditable and be faster? Why do you have a human calling balls and strikes? Especially because that little imaginary box changes based on the size of the batter. Like, are you kidding?
Well, that's the art of calling them, right? Like you need to adjust.
No, there are so many other variables that make sport interesting that always are going to have that human dynamic. I think if the best argument, and so like, what's the steel man? If the best argument for keeping a human ump in a baseball game is its tradition, that's a terrible argument.
Or that there's a charm to the imperfection of it. Just to play devil's advocate.
No, I get it. I want to hear the best argument. And I think the charm of the imperfection to me, so I would say, okay, is that charm of imperfection important? Like, should every baseball be rigorously tested so it's the exact same composition? Or do we really care about the charm and the imperfection, and thus 1 out of 10 baseballs is loaded or
scuffed,
is loaded,
tarred?
Like,
yep.
I mean, like, right? And so if an argument is durable if you can apply it to other parts of the game. And so I think that one automatically falls on its face. That's not enough for me.
I got 2 more for you. You've gotten involved in UVA, Virginia, with the basketball team. Let's go. And we are seeing this NIL explosion. I mean, deep-pocketed alumni getting involved, in some cases taking like an official role. Yeah. Just what do you make of that whole sphere, especially in some cases more opportunity for the athletes than ever, but also it has certainly caused like political problems for a lot of schools?
I like, UVA in particular had been very they really wanted to follow the rules of the road. We have an honor code. It's TJ's university. So like, I will give UVA credit. They really wanted to make sure there were clear rules of the road for how NIL could work. And as soon as that switch was flipped and the judges ruled, I called up. I said, hey, I want to make UVA a contender. Let me know what to do. And so very grateful to be a big donor there to the women's basketball program. I think, look, what is undeniable here is you're seeing this professionalization of sports at so many different levels. In college, I think it will be a net positive. It has already been a positive in women's sports because the free market doesn't care about your feelings. The free market just wants to put dollars to where it thinks it can generate value. And when you have, for instance, women of basketball in college making millions of dollars, my friend Flau'jae Johnson, she stayed an extra year at LSU because she was getting paid so well there. God bless, that's amazing. And again, it doesn't happen because of feminism. It doesn't happen because of social issues. It happens because the free market is saying you and your following are so worth it. I need to give you money in exchange for your audience. And that is an exclamation point that makes women's sports provably valuable as a business, not as a charity. This is why I'm never out here talking about it as anything other than a business first. And so in the short term, I think women's sports has been a huge winner. In athletics, I'm definitely worried. I think a lot of these smaller, less viable collegiate sports will suffer, and that's a hard truth. I think basketball will flourish, football will flourish. I think athletics will suffer. I think universities will probably face some existential crisis because this is also happening at the same time as there's less confidence in the need for a college education than ever. Those numbers have, at the last numbers, pull up the stats, it was like 30% of Americans think college education is worth it. I'm butchering the stat, but look, it's fallen precipitously from like 78% from when we were in college. When we were in college, it was like a default. Of course, this is the way up. This is the way a middle-class kid like myself can have the career that I've had. And yet the value prop doesn't make sense anymore. While costs and tuition get higher, I think this will force some universities to really figure out what they are about, what their why is. And for some more heavy sports programs, I hope it sort of resets what that program should be about. But it's going to be, I think long term it will be positive. Medium term now we're going to feel some pain, but short term it's been a huge win for women, and I love seeing excellence get rewarded.
Michelle Wee was in here sitting in that same seat, said the exact same thing. It's not a charity. People should stop saying we need to support women's sports. It needs to thrive on its own or not. Let's end on this. Best investing advice that you've been given, best investing advice that you would give others.
Wow. The best advice I have been given is to focus on areas where you have a demonstrable unfair advantage and then continue to double down in those spaces. So for instance, right, I invest now under 776. I've invested 9 figures of my own money in this fund. So it's a fund. We have outside investors, but I'm like the biggest one. And I spend exactly 0 time investing in publicly traded companies. I spend exactly 0 time. Like I have other people much smarter than me, much more expert than me, doing investing in all these other areas. But the one area where I have such an unfair advantage, especially with technology and this sort of early stage type thing, I want to concentrate a lot of my money and all of my time because I know that's where I have edge. And so, yeah, I've got a Robinhood account where I'll YOLO on some stuff every now and then, but it's not, that's casino money in my mind. I lose all that money and I'm fine with, like, I have to know that's casino money because I don't have an edge. And I think, especially for the type of investing that I do, very, very early stage, the compounding effect that happens in those big winners, being early in Coinbase or Instacart or even Reddit, like with time, those big winners compound in such big ways from relatively small sums that it's even more worth it for me to stay focused on those areas. But I'd probably give some version of that advice to other people too. And I think, and here's the other one too, really maybe this will sound cheesy, one of the best investments you can make is actually in yourself. And we're at a time right now where, like, I got good grades. I got good enough grades in school to go to UVA. I did apply early decision, but I was never the top of my class. I was never valedictorian, like 3.5, 3.6 GPA out of 4, like good, but not straight A's, any of that. I was never the smartest guy in the room. And we are now in an age where for guys like me, we've just been handed superpowers because super intelligence is now commoditized. And whatever your thoughts are on AI, at the end of the day, this is the worst it's ever going to be. And the ability for all of us to now tap into, in real time, PhD level intelligence is trivial, and that is a modern miracle. And what it means is for people who are high agency, for people who are high curiosity, for people who are high like getting things done, you have just been gifted superpowers. Because the one thing that you probably didn't win the life lottery ticket on was having the raw intellectual horsepower to like be brilliant. You don't have to be brilliant anymore. And there's a different kind of talent that is now going to get rewarded in this new economy, where if you can, and this is what I try to do with my own kids, like if you can stoke that ability to be curious, to be high agency, you have just been gifted amazing superpowers in this world. And so that's what I mean by investing in yourself. And it's for folks who are oriented that way, the next 10, 20, who knows how many years are going to be tremendous.
Food for thought. Alexis, thanks so much.
My pleasure.
Great talk.
Thank you, man. We covered a lot of bases, but